They say money can't buy you love, but I never thought it would buy me betrayal. I walked into my best friend's birthday party with a diamond ring on my finger and trust in my heart. I walked out knowing that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones holding the knife. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, hit that like button right now. And if you want to hear stories about real women who turn their pain into power, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. My name is Jasmine, and at 34, I'm worth more money than I ever dreamed possible. But that night, I learned that some things are worth more than all the billions in the world. See, I wasn't born into wealth. I wasn't handed anything on a silver platter. I grew up in a small apartment with my grandmother after my parents died in a car accident when I was 10. Money was tight, dreams felt impossible, but my grandmother always told me that my mind was my greatest asset. I started coding when I was 12 years old on an old computer my neighbor was throwing away. While other kids were playing outside, I was teaching myself programming languages, building websites, creating little games. My grandmother didn't understand what I was doing, but she saw the passion in my eyes. She worked double shifts as a nurse just to keep food on the table, and I promised myself I'd make her proud someday. By the time I was 18, I had already created 3 apps that were making decent money. College felt like a waste of time when I could be building something real. So I dropped out after my freshman year, much to everyone's horror. My professors thought I was crazy. My friends thought I was throwing my life away. But I knew what I wanted to build, and I couldn't wait 4 more years to do it. The AI platform I created changed everything. It started as a simple idea to help small businesses automate their customer service, but it evolved into something revolutionary. Companies started paying millions just to license my technology. Within 5 years, my little startup was valued at over $3 billion. $3 billion. Sometimes I still can't believe it myself. But here's the thing about success that nobody tells you. It changes how people see you, but it also changes how you see yourself. I never let the money go to my head. I still drove the same car for 3 years after my first big payout. I still shopped at regular grocery stores. I still remembered what it felt like to count every dollar. Money was a tool, not my identity. What mattered to me was the relationships I built, the people I could trust, the love I could give and receive. That's what I thought mattered anyway. 3 years ago, I met David at a coffee shop near my office. I was having one of those days where everything felt overwhelming, sitting alone at a corner table with my laptop, probably looking like I hadn't slept in days. He approached me with this genuine smile and asked if I was okay. Not because he recognized me from some magazine cover or tech conference, but because I looked like a human being who needed someone to care. David was an architect, successful in his own right, passionate about designing affordable housing projects. He had these big dreams about changing communities, creating spaces where families could thrive. When he talked about his work, his eyes lit up the same way mine did when I talked about coding. He understood what it meant to build something from nothing, to have a vision that other people couldn't see yet. For the first 2 months we dated, he had no idea about my company or my wealth. I introduced myself as Jasmine, not as the CEO of anything. We went to regular restaurants, caught movies at the neighborhood theater, took walks in the park. He paid for dates, insisted on it actually, and I let him because I could see it made him feel good to take care of me. When I finally told him about my business, he was shocked, but he handled it better than most people do. He didn't suddenly start suggesting expensive restaurants or asking for loans. He just held my hand and said he was proud of me. Our relationship felt real, in a way that nothing else in my life did anymore. With David, I could just be Jasmine, not the billionaire tech genius everyone else wanted to meet. He loved how I got excited about new algorithms, how I could spend hours debugging code, how I still got nervous before big presentations. He made me feel normal, grounded, like the success hadn't changed who I was at the core. 6 months ago, he proposed during a quiet dinner at the same coffee shop where we met. The ring wasn't the biggest or most expensive one he could have chosen, but it was perfect because he picked it himself, because he knew I'd rather have something meaningful than something flashy. We started planning our wedding immediately, set the date for 6 months out. Everything felt like it was falling into place exactly as it should. And then there was Keisha, my best friend since we were 8 years old. We met in 3rd grade, when her family moved to my neighborhood, and we clicked instantly. She was the sister I never had, the person who knew all my secrets, who celebrated every victory and held me through every defeat. When my grandmother passed away 5 years ago, Keisha was the one who helped me plan the funeral, who made sure I ate when I couldn't think about food, who reminded me that my grandmother would want me to keep building my dreams. Keisha had always been the creative one between us. While I was coding, she was planning elaborate birthday parties for our friends, organizing school events, making everything look beautiful and special. So when my business started taking off, one of the first things I did was help her start her own event planning company. I gave her the startup capital, connected her with my network, recommended her to every wealthy contact I had. Watching her business grow felt almost as good as watching my own success. We were both living our dreams, supporting each other the way we always had. Keisha's 33rd birthday was approaching, and I wanted to do something special for her. Not just because I could afford it, but because she deserved it. Her event planning business was thriving. She was finally dating someone who treated her well, and she seemed happier than I'd seen her in years. I decided to surprise her with an offer to become official business partners. I wanted to invest in a bigger office space for her, help her expand to other cities, maybe even franchise the whole operation. It felt like the perfect birthday gift, not just money, but a real opportunity to grow something together. The party was at one of those upscale venues downtown, the kind of place Keisha had always dreamed of hosting events at when we were younger. She'd booked it herself, of course, but I could see the pride in her eyes when she told me about it. The guest list was a mix of her clients, our mutual friends, and some of my business contacts who had become genuine friends over the years. About 60 people total, intimate but elegant, exactly Keisha's style. David had a client dinner that night, some important presentation for a new housing development project. He was disappointed he'd have to meet me at the party instead of picking me up. But work was work. I understood better than anyone how demanding careers can be. He promised he'd be there by 9 at the latest, said he couldn't wait to celebrate with Keisha and dance with me. I told him I'd save him a piece of cake. I spent extra time getting ready that night, chose a dress that Keisha had complimented months earlier, had my hair done at the salon she always recommended. I wanted to look perfect for her special day, wanted her to feel proud, to have me as her best friend. I picked up the gift I'd had custom made for her. A beautiful jewelry box, engraved with a quote about friendship, with the business partnership documents hidden inside as a surprise. When I arrived at the venue, the party was already in full swing. The decorations were stunning, all gold and deep purple, Keisha's favorite colors. String lights created this warm, intimate atmosphere, and I could hear laughter and music spilling out from the main room. I felt this rush of happiness, seeing how successful the event was, how many people had come to celebrate someone I loved so much. I made my rounds, greeting friends, complimenting Keisha on how beautiful everything looked, taking pictures with the birthday girl. She looked radiant in this flowing gold dress, her smile brighter than I'd seen in months. For about an hour, everything felt perfect. I was surrounded by people I cared about, celebrating someone I loved, looking forward to, surprising her with an opportunity that could change both our lives. David still hadn't arrived, but I wasn't worried. Traffic was probably terrible, or the client dinner was running long. He'd be there soon, and then the night would be complete. I kept checking my phone, sending him little updates about the party, telling him which of our friends were there, how good the food was. The last text I sent him was at 10:30. "Hurry up, you're missing all the fun. Keisha keeps asking where you are." He never responded to that message. At the time, I thought his phone was probably dead, or he was driving and couldn't text back safely. I had no idea that he was already there, just not where I expected him to be. By 11 o'clock, I decided to find Keisha and give her the surprise. The party was winding down a bit. People were getting comfortable on the couches. Some were heading to the bar for another round. I looked around the main room but couldn't spot her anywhere. Someone mentioned they'd seen her go upstairs to the VIP area, probably taking a breather from hosting duties. I climbed the elegant staircase, my heels clicking against the marble steps. The VIP area was quieter, more intimate, with dim lighting and plush furniture. There were several private rooms up there, and I could hear soft music coming from behind one of the doors. I smiled to myself, thinking maybe Keisha was having a private moment with her new boyfriend, the one she'd been gushing about for weeks, but hadn't introduced to everyone yet. I approached the door, my hand on the handle, ready to knock and tell her I had something special to show her. But then I heard something that made my blood freeze. A laugh I recognized, David's laugh, low and intimate, the way he laughed when we were alone together. My heart started racing, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he'd finally arrived and was looking for me too. I turned the handle quietly and pushed the door open just a crack. What I saw in that moment changed everything. David and Keisha were wrapped around each other on the velvet couch, kissing like they were the only two people in the world. His hands were in her hair, her dress was sliding off her shoulder, and they were completely lost in each other. Time stopped. Everything stopped. The sounds of the party below faded away. My breathing became shallow, and I felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. Not David, who told me he loved me every morning. Not Keisha, who helped me pick out my wedding dress just 2 weeks ago. They didn't notice me at first. They were too caught up in their moment, too consumed by whatever had been building between them. I stood there frozen, watching the two most important people in my life betray me in the most intimate way possible. My engagement ring suddenly felt heavy on my finger, the weight of 3 years of trust and love turning into something that made me feel sick. I cleared my throat and they sprang apart like teenagers caught by their parents. David's face went completely white when he saw me. Keisha gasped and tried to fix her dress, her lipstick smeared, her hair a mess. For a moment, nobody said anything. We just stared at each other, all of us trying to process what was happening. "Jasmine," David stammered, jumping up from the couch. "This isn't what it looks like. I can explain." But his shirt was unbuttoned, his tie was loose, and he looked guilty as hell. How do you explain away what I'd just witnessed? How do you make that look innocent? Keisha started crying immediately, but there was something different about her tears. They weren't just tears of guilt or shame. There was anger there too, like somehow I was the one who had done something wrong by walking in on them. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but then she looked up at me with defiance in her eyes. "But I'm not really sorry, Jasmine. You have everything. Everything has always come so easy for you. I just wanted something that was mine." The words hit me harder than seeing them together had. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake. This was resentment that had been building for who knows how long. "Something that was yours," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "He's my fiancé, Keisha. We're getting married in 6 months." David tried to step toward me, but I held up my hand to stop him. "Don't," I said. "Just don't. Tell me how long this has been going on." My voice was steady, but inside I was screaming. Inside, everything I thought I knew about my life was crumbling. 8 months, Keisha said, wiping her eyes but meeting my gaze directly. "It started right after you got engaged. David came to me, confused about whether he was making the right decision. He needed someone to talk to, Someone who knew you both. 8 months. 8 months of lies, of fake smiles, of planning a wedding to a man who was sleeping with my best friend. 8 months of Keisha helping me choose flowers and venues while she was betraying me behind my back. I felt like I was going to be sick. So this whole time, I said slowly, while you were helping me plan my wedding, while you were my maid of honor, while you were telling me how happy you were for me, you were sleeping with my fiancé. It wasn't a question. It was just me trying to make sense of a reality that felt completely surreal. David finally found his voice, but what came out made everything so much worse. Jasmine, I tried to love you the way you deserved, but it's complicated. Your success, your money, it changed things between us. I felt like I was just along for the ride in your life. So you decided to ride my best friend instead? The words came out sharper than I intended, but I was past caring about being polite. When exactly did you decide that my money was the problem? Before or after you moved into my penthouse? Before or after I paid off your student loans? He had the decency to look ashamed, but Keisha jumped in to defend him. It's not about the money, Jasmine. It's about connection. David and I understand each other in ways that you two never did. We're both creative people, both building something meaningful. You're brilliant, but you live in this world of numbers and algorithms. David needs someone who gets his artistic side. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. His artistic side. Keisha, I'm the one who sat through every architectural presentation, who celebrated every project he landed, who understood his passion for affordable housing, because I grew up in those communities too. But sure, tell me more about this deep connection you have. That's when she dropped the bomb that shattered what was left of my heart. I'm pregnant, Jasmine. It's David's baby. We've been trying to figure out how to tell you, but there never seemed to be a right time. The room spun around me. Pregnant. My best friend was pregnant with my fiancé's child. All those times she'd seemed tired lately. All those excuses about not feeling well. All those moments when I'd worried about her and offered to help. She was carrying his baby while I was planning to carry his name. How far along? I asked, my voice completely hollow now. 4 months, she whispered. 4 months. That meant she was pregnant before David and I had even set our wedding date. They'd been planning a life together while I was planning a life with him. Every conversation about the future, every decision we'd made about our wedding, our honeymoon, our life together, it had all been a lie. David looked like he wanted to disappear completely. Jasmine, I never meant for any of this to happen. I do care about you, I always have. But with Keisha, it's different. It's real in a way that I never expected. Real, I repeated. So our 3 years together, that was what? Practice? A placeholder until something real came along? I looked at both of them, these people I'd trusted with my heart, my secrets, my dreams. You know what's real, David? The fact that you researched my net worth before we even had our 3rd date. Yeah, I know about that. You think I got where I am by not paying attention to details. The look of shock on his face told me everything I needed to know. He thought he'd been so careful, so smooth. But I'd always known something felt off about how quickly he'd accepted my wealth, how comfortable he'd become with my lifestyle. What happened next surprised all of us, including me. Instead of screaming or crying or throwing things, I felt this strange calm wash over me. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it was the part of me that had survived losing my parents, that had built a billion-dollar company from nothing, that had learned to make impossible decisions under pressure. I slowly pulled my engagement ring off my finger and placed it on the table next to the couch where they'd been tangled together just minutes before. The diamond caught the light from the chandelier, sparkling like it was mocking me. Consider this my birthday gift to you, Keisha, I said quietly. You can have him. Apparently you already do. Both of them stared at me like they couldn't believe what was happening. I think they expected me to fight for him, to beg, to make some dramatic scene. But looking at them sitting there, guilt and defiance mixing on their faces, I realized I didn't want to fight for someone who didn't want to be fought for. "That's it?" David asked, and I could hear something like disappointment in his voice. Maybe he wanted me to fall apart, to prove that I needed him, that my success hadn't made me completely independent. "What did you expect, David? Did you want me to compete with a pregnant woman for a man who's been lying to me for 8 months? Did you want me to beg you to choose me over the woman carrying your child?" I picked up my purse and headed toward the door. I have more respect for myself than that. Keisha called after me as I reached the doorway. "Jasmine, wait. Can we talk about this? Can we figure out how to move forward?" I turned back to look at her one last time. This woman who had been my sister in every way that mattered, who had held my hand through my grandmother's funeral, who had celebrated every milestone in my life like it was her own. "There's nothing to figure out, Keisha. You made your choice. Both of you did. Now you get to live with it." I walked out of that room, down the marble staircase, through the party that was still going on like nothing had changed. People were laughing, dancing, having a good time, completely unaware that my entire world had just collapsed upstairs. I smiled and waved at a few people, made some excuse about an early morning meeting, and walked out into the cool night air. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I kept the radio off, needing the silence to process what had just happened. When I finally made it to my penthouse, I walked straight to my bedroom and collapsed on the bed, still in my party dress, still in my heels. That's when it hit me. That's when the tears finally came. I cried for the 3 years I'd wasted on someone who never really loved me. I cried for the friendship I'd lost, for the sister I'd never have again. I cried for the wedding I'd been planning, for the future I'd been dreaming about, for the trust I'd given so freely to people who didn't deserve it. I cried until I had nothing left, until my body was exhausted and my heart felt empty. The next morning, I called my assistant and told her to clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks. I needed time to think, to figure out how to move forward, to decide what came next. For the first time in my adult life, I couldn't just power through and pretend everything was fine. I started seeing a therapist, something I probably should have done years earlier. Dr. Williams helped me understand that what happened wasn't really about me at all. It was about David's insecurity, about Keisha's jealousy, about 2 people who couldn't handle being in the orbit of someone else's success. She helped me see the patterns I'd missed, the red flags I'd ignored because I wanted so badly to believe in the relationships I'd built. David tried to contact me dozens of times in those first few weeks, calls, texts, emails, even showing up at my office building. But I'd changed my locks, updated my security, and made it clear through my lawyer that any further contact would be considered harassment. I didn't want his apologies or his explanations. I didn't want to hear about how confused he'd been or how sorry he was. Sorry doesn't undo 8 months of betrayal. Keisha was quieter but more persistent. She sent me a long letter, handwritten, explaining her side of the story. How she'd always felt like she was in my shadow. How my success had made her feel small. How David had made her feel special in a way she'd never experienced. She asked for forgiveness, for a chance to explain, for the friendship we'd built over 25 years. I read the letter once and then threw it away. Some things can't be forgiven, and some people don't deserve second chances. 6 months later, I was a different person. Not broken, not bitter, but definitely wiser. I'd learned to trust my instincts again, to pay attention to the small inconsistencies that I'd dismissed before. I'd learned that being successful meant I had to be more careful about who I let into my inner circle, but I refused to let their betrayal make me cynical about love or friendship entirely. I threw myself back into my work with a new sense of purpose. Instead of just building technology, I started focusing on how my platform could empower other women, especially women who looked like me, who came from backgrounds like mine. I launched a mentorship program, funded scholarships for young women in tech, and started speaking at conferences about the importance of supporting each other instead of competing. The foundation I created became my passion project. Every month I met with women who were starting their own businesses, who had ideas but not resources, who needed someone to believe in them the way I wished someone had believed in me when I was 18 and dropping out of college. Watching them succeed, seeing their dreams come to life, filled a space in my heart that I didn't even know was empty. I heard through mutual friends that David and Keisha's relationship had fallen apart within 4 months of that night. Apparently, the reality of being together was different from the excitement of sneaking around. The baby was born healthy, and they were co-parenting, but not together. I felt nothing when I heard the news. Not satisfaction, not sadness, just complete indifference. They had become strangers to me, people from a past life that no longer had any power over my present. My new life was smaller, but more authentic. I had fewer people in my inner circle, but the ones who remained had proven their loyalty, not just with words, but with actions. I dated occasionally, but I took my time, asked harder questions, paid attention to motivations and patterns. I wasn't in a hurry to replace what I'd lost, because I'd realized that what I'd had wasn't as real as I'd thought it was. Looking back now, I understand that night was the best thing that could have happened to me. Not because betrayal is good, but because it forced me to see the truth about people I'd been making excuses for. It taught me that success changes relationships, sometimes in ways you don't expect. Some people will love you for who you are, and others will resent you for what you have. I learned that loyalty is rare and precious, and that the people who truly love you will celebrate your success, not use it against you. I learned that trust should be earned over time, not given freely just because someone says the right words or makes the right gestures. Most importantly, I learned that my worth doesn't depend on anyone else's ability to see it or appreciate it. The money, the success, the recognition, those things are nice, but they're not what define me. What defines me is how I treat people, how I use my resources to lift others up, how I handle both triumph and betrayal with grace. David and Keisha taught me that lesson in the most painful way possible, but I'm grateful for it now. Today, I'm happier than I've ever been. I found love again, but this time with someone who knew me before my company went public. Someone who fell in love with my mind and my heart before he ever learned about my bank account. We take things slow, we communicate openly, and we've both learned from our past mistakes. Keisha reached out to me on my birthday last year, asking if we could talk, if there was any way to rebuild what we'd lost. I thought about it for a long time before responding. I told her that I forgave her, not for her sake, but for mine, but that forgiveness doesn't mean we go back to the way things were. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Some trust, once broken, can't be repaired. I don't hate her anymore. I don't hate David either. They're just people who made choices that revealed who they really were underneath all the words and promises. I'm grateful that I found out when I did, before I married someone who saw me as a bank account with benefits, before I wasted more years on a friendship that was built on resentment instead of love. My life now is intentional, authentic, and full of people who genuinely care about my well-being. I've learned that it's better to have a few real relationships than many fake ones. I've learned that success is more meaningful when you use it to help others succeed. And I've learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you ends up being the catalyst for the best thing that happens to you. Ladies, if this story resonated with you, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, hit that like button if you believe every woman deserves loyalty and respect. Second, subscribe to this channel because I share real stories about real women who refuse to settle for less. And third, drop a comment below telling me about a time you had to choose your own worth over someone else's comfort. Your story might be featured in our next video. Remember, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth.